Hello, everyone. I am Chelsea Kale McNeely, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar. I am the Director of Online Programming at Southeast Missouri State University, and I'm happy to be the moderator for today's session. This session was selected as a special session for our MEMS content preview. The MEMS seminar is scheduled for November 7th through 9th in Long Beach, California, and we hope you can be there to meet with us and learn more about this topic and others that will be at the conference. So today we're going to be talking about growing graduate enrollment through LinkedIn, and the panelists have put together several objectives to help you get an idea of what you'll learn in this session. They'll be sharing with you the importance of career data in graduate enrollment marketing, improvements in LinkedIn ad platform, best practices for targeting, message, and conversion, and how Northeastern University leverages LinkedIn for enrollment. Covering that vast array of content, you may have questions for the folks presenting this. As questions arise, please feel free to put those in the chat box. I will be collecting those throughout the presentation, and we'll save some time at the end to review all of the questions for some Q&A. If technical issues occur also, please feel free to put those in chat, and we have a UPCEA representative, Jacqueline, on the call who will be helping us with technical concerns. So content or technical questions, please throw those in the chat. And who's going to be presenting this information for us today? We have a great panel for you. Amy Dono is the marketing assistant at the DeMoore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University. A nationally ranked business school, DeMoore McKim features MBA, MS, and dual degree programs. Amy is part of the team responsible for branding, lead generation, and enrollment marketing for all on-campus programs. We also have Forrest Baker. He's the Senior Account Executive at LinkedIn. Forrest is the Education Lead Account Executive. And we have Pat Riley. He's a partner at Digital Strategy at 5HD Agency. 5HD is a full-service digital marketing agency working with graduate and continuing education clients around the country, focusing on branding, lead generation, and enrollment marketing. 5HD is the agency of record for the DeMoore McKim School of Business. With that introduction, I want to turn it over to the panelists. Please share with us some of your strategies.
Thanks so much, Chelsea. Hi, everybody. This is Pat. We're going to talk again, like Chelsea mentioned, about the increasing role that we are seeing LinkedIn playing in our higher education portfolio. Just as a side note, at 5HD, about 2/3 of our work is in graduate and continuing education. So we see this across a lot of our portfolio across the country. And we wanted to talk a little bit with an expert in Forrest and with our client, Amy, who's really gotten some hands-on on-the-ground experience with these strategies. We wanted to start with something that's pretty straightforward that I think a lot of people understand, but it's worthwhile starting here, and that's the importance of career data and when we're doing marketing for higher education. We have a really basic value proposition in higher ed, especially in graduate education. You're going to give us your time and your money, and we're going to give back to you career-relevant skills that are going to help you earn more money, advancement and promotions, and have increased prestige in your career. It's a pretty straightforward give and take. And because of that, most of our programs in graduate and continuing ed are career-based. These are just some examples of programs that our clients market on a regular basis that are all important to know who your target is and where they work and what their career trajectory is. Of course, there are examples of folks who are changing careers or may be coming from a non-career relevant space into a new program and will need education that you offer to get there. But most of what we do, it's important to know where the person's working and how they're going to advance in a current career track. So when you're thinking about how do we target somebody in a career track, LinkedIn is and has been for a long time the gold standard of career data. To talk a little bit more about how they do that and the setup of LinkedIn data around careers and individuals, I want to turn things over to Forrest.
Thanks, Pat. So LinkedIn was started in 2003, and our mission is to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. We currently have, getting close to 6 million members globally. Our core consumer target are professional, white-collar workers. It's estimated that maybe somewhere between 800 million to 1 billion of these, knowledge workers in the world. So I think we're doing a good job of penetrating that audience. But then our second goal is to reach basically college students or students in general. These are the people who we know will be transitioning into that knowledge worker target. So LinkedIn is a global platform. We are in over 27 languages now. We are still growing on a very fast and healthy clip with over 2 new members per second. And what, as a marketer, it's important to keep in mind that, desktop is still a huge platform for us, but mobile now, is now making up over half of our monthly unique visits. Pat, you want to go to the next slide? So as Pat was mentioning, so LinkedIn's position, again, is really, if you have a professional identity, and when you want people to know that side of you, right? We all have a house, we all, typically have an office. It's because we have 2 different, spaces that we may operate in throughout the day. Doesn't mean less is one genuine than the other, but they are just different spaces and we operate differently in them. So, if you're going to go ahead and invest as a professional profile, we want LinkedIn to be that place for you. So you can think about LinkedIn in terms of your professional profile, and as a marketer, any facet on that profile is something you can use to reach the right people. So in higher ed, very common things that marketers will use are going to be things that, around field of study, what degrees people already have or don't have, schools they have attended, things like that. And then we're going to talk more about this in this webinar, but using someone's current position or career trajectory as a signal for what they might be interested in getting additional education in is also a great way to leverage LinkedIn. So there's other areas of the profile that we use. And then lastly, industry and so forth, company names, things like that. Those are also great facets. And then we have our common, demographics, things, someone's age, gender, and so forth. Pat, next slide, please. So it's interesting, I work with a lot of different marketers, talk to a lot of different people about LinkedIn. Everyone has a very strong perception, and it's heavily grounded in their own usage of LinkedIn, which is, it's human, it's normal. A couple things just to think about in terms of how is LinkedIn perceived. Sometimes people will say, oh, you're social, where do you do social? Well, LinkedIn is, yes, we are social, in that there can be a 2-way conversation between brands and a community and amongst the community, but we're perceived very differently from the other standard social platforms. So Business Insider recently did a study looking at how much people trust these different social platforms. And what you see is, according to their approach, that LinkedIn was basically 2 times higher on this particular index that they use compared to anybody else. So we're a highly trusted platform. Next slide, please. And then on top of that, this is a study that we had actually conducted on our members, and this is actually a couple of years old now. And I think the numbers may even change now. But we wanted to understand how our members perceive us around, again, trust of the content they were reading on our platform, and how they would think of us related in relation to other social sites, but also trusted news brands. So one of the goals that we have at LinkedIn is to become every individual's personal trade magazine. We want to have relevant information being served to you that you feel like you're compelled to want to come back every day to stay in touch with your network, staying in touch with what's happening in your industry and so forth. And what we see here is that LinkedIn is much more akin to a trusted news publisher than what you would think of as like a Facebook or a Twitter. And then so getting more to like a marketer's goal, if someone's using LinkedIn, so what's the value proposition here? So, when it comes to enrollment marketing, you want to be, if you're trying to decide, am I using my marketing dollars efficiently? Looking through your entire funnel is important, right? So you see back in the day, people actually cared just about click-through rate, which is crazy, but that's one of the metrics they had. And it was cost per click, things like that. We've gotten much more sophisticated. And now, yes, you can look at a cost per inquiry, cost per lead, that's great. Then you want to look at cost per application, cost per enrollment, cost per start. And you should also be concerned about whether or not you have your students actually completing your programs too. Gainful employment is a big issue as well. And so with LinkedIn, this question of, is it an efficient platform? The data that you can see in the slide here, it comes from an agency that was running campaigns for a number of different schools. And what they were looking at was when they were advertising programs on LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, and Google here is both search and their ads, display ads, is a mix. What they were noticing was this: they shared the data back with us. Basically, when you looked at our cost per lead, they're like, look, you guys are more expensive. LinkedIn has a higher cost per click. The cost per lead's higher. So that is, Facebook was about half of what our cost per lead was. Google was 86%. So we didn't look so good there. When they then looked at, well, did those leads convert to actually applications? This is where, the leads or the inquiries that LinkedIn was delivering started to show that they were better quality. So now the Facebook cost per applications were almost twice as high as LinkedIn. So a lot of their inquiries were not converting. Google still looks very good compared to us. But then that last phase, did these people actually, after they're admitted, actually start? And this is where LinkedIn really shines. So now Facebook, getting their cost per start was 3 times as much, and Google is actually about 25% more than ours. So LinkedIn's we're a great platform for quality inquiries, but it's one of these things where in your marketing, you have to look at the funnel to decide, are you really getting a good ROI from the platform? All right, thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Forrest. So one of the things that, as an agency that works with graduate and continuing education, we'd always looked at LinkedIn and said, geez, it would be great if we could do more there because of the kind of career data that was there. Now, some of this is based on client budgets and things like this, but there used to be a decent number of barriers for us to do a lot with LinkedIn. This is maybe in the last 2-3 years, where if you were going to do anything meaningful on LinkedIn beyond a small text ad with a very small photo that went along with it, you had to spend a $25,000 minimum in a set period of time. You required an insertion order to work directly with a rep. As an agency, we do a lot of self-managed campaigns, so we're very interested in control, both over the data and also how we're managing the campaigns, what bid adjustments are being made, what targeting adjustments are being made, and being able to make creative and targeting adjustments in real time. In the past, because you'd have to IO it out, we would have to send creative out, and even if you have terrific reps and LinkedIn's team is fantastic, you're still looking at a 48, maybe 72-hour turnaround for creative. Getting reporting, it's not realistic to ask your rep to turn reporting around every day or every 2 days, whereas an agency, we want to be able to look in and see it all the time. And also, and this is a more in the past situation, but there'd be ad creative that was really focused to content marketing. There's a time when you had to have a steady stream of content created on your page to be able to then run sponsored updates. And that all of those things meant that we didn't use the platform very much with our clients. And we actually were using Facebook much more in a much bigger way, is I guess the best way to say it. Since then, from our perspective, LinkedIn's made a lot of really valuable improvements in their ad platform, which is part of the reason why we're even having this discussion now, is we think it's a big opportunity for graduate and continuing education marketers. There are no longer minimum budgets because they have a self-serve platform. The creative units are available to be created in direct response, meaning you can get them to click to a landing page or to an inquiry form. You can also create ads immediately. You don't have to have a white paper or a long piece of creative created to be able to go and leverage it on LinkedIn. Being that it's a self-serve platform, you have immediate real-time access to all data in terms of how the campaign is performing, as well as the creation and optimization of that campaign. Also, the implementation of a universal marketing pixel has allowed us to be able to leverage custom audiences, retargeting campaigns, exclusions based on web visits, and most importantly, to be able to measure conversions on landing page campaigns, both post-click and post-view. All of that we'll get into in the coming slides. But these are simple but important platform improvements that were a big deal for us as an agency to do more with LinkedIn. Because the data platform really good, and also, as Forrest mentioned, we see this too where the leads progress well. When we start looking at LinkedIn leads from a cost per application and a cost per enrollment standpoint, they far outperform Facebook, which is a common competitor in the social space. As an example of just, these are our spend numbers for our education portfolio, not any one particular client. In the year from August 2016 to August 2017, we were very heavily invested in Facebook versus LinkedIn. After the changes that we saw on the platform and changes in performance, the following year, you can see a very drastic change in our clients' expenditures, where we're spending a lot more on LinkedIn because of the value of the targeting, the benefits of their persistence through our sales funnels, and just the opportunity to engage with people in a more meaningful way. That's the reason why we want to talk about LinkedIn. The rest of this presentation is really about best practices for using the platform. There are a lot of small pieces here and there that are really important for being successful, and with the experience we've had, we want to share that, specifically with the work we've done with DeMoore McKim, but across our entire portfolio as well. So the three things that we want to talk about within LinkedIn advertising are how we target, how we actually create and serve a message, and then how we convert that message into leads and applications. So let's start with targeting. We're going to take this target in a couple of different slices, but let's start with just the baked-in LinkedIn data platform, the first-party data that Forrest mentioned earlier in the presentation, that we know as individuals, we fill out in our own accounts. And if you own a company or are part of a company where you're managing that company's LinkedIn account, you're also then filling in data there. So there's a lot of self-reported, highly detailed information. What kind of work you're doing, the seniority level of what you're doing, your education, areas of study, there's a lot in there that we're providing to the platform that can be very valuable for graduate and continuing education marketing. These are the different categories of targeting that you can use out of LinkedIn's data platform. Worth taking a screenshot here. I believe that we'll be able to share these slides afterwards. You can also see this if you have a LinkedIn ad account set up, but these are the different setups that you can use. There's 16 different categories, everything from company name and job title down to field of study, degree, years of experience, and seniority. Now, there are some interesting things to keep in mind with how LinkedIn tabulates its data. I think it's also good to keep in the back of your mind that LinkedIn is a company with varied revenue sources. I'm always thinking about this because you want to know where people's motivations are. One of the things that we like about LinkedIn's data is that only about 20% of their revenue comes from advertising, which means the data is not solely based to make it attractive to me as an ad buyer or to you as an advertiser. It's there to be useful for recruiters. It's there to be useful for salespeople who leverage the data. And I'm sure, Forrest, feel free to hop in, but there are many other uses that people use this data for. Gives us a little bit of a higher confidence in it than if it was just a platform that's trying to make its data look good for advertisers, which we know that exists. Something to keep in mind, though, when you're building these campaigns out. 4 key pieces we want you to come away with. One is audience size. When you're creating a campaign, and there's no hard and fast rule for this, but we like to make sure that there are at least 20,000 or more members in an individual target. Part of that is these are the number of LinkedIn members who will match. So on the right-hand side of your screen is an example campaign that we've done with DeMoore McKim, giving you an example of what are all the details that go into putting together a target. The top line number, you can see that, that in this audience, we have 190,000 LinkedIn members. That's wonderful, but we also have to keep in mind that those members have to be on the platform to see our ad messages, whether it's sponsored content, which we'll get into in a little bit, or in-mail. If you're not on the platform, you're not seeing the ad message, so you have to allow for the time spent with the platform. As Forrest mentioned, that continues to increase, but it's not at the same level as the Facebook or Instagram where people are spending 5, 6, 7 hours a day on the platform. We want to make sure that there are enough people so that we're going to get enough share of voice as we're running the campaign. The other is category overlap. There are certain categories you can't run at the same time of those 16. They do make it really simple when you're in there that if you pick one, it'll gray out the others that you can't choose. But it's just something to keep in mind that you can't pick one out of every one of those 16 for a target. Another sample of a potential trap that sometimes people run into are around age and years of experience. These are very important targeting metrics when we talk about building out campaigns, but the way that LinkedIn treats them can be a little bit tricky. Years of experience is strictly based on how many jobs and the time of those jobs that are in your LinkedIn profile. The way that sounds like exactly the way to do it, which is very straightforward. However, if you're looking at a program like a full-time MBA, is a program we market for DeMoore-McKim. Their students tend to be in their mid to late 20s and early 30s. So they're going to have 5+ years of experience. If we only put in, say, 5 to 10 years of experience as a target, if any one of those LinkedIn users included a college job or a high school job, which many people do, especially young people who are trying to fill out a resume, will put, I was a sales associate at a TJ Maxx. I was a waitress at a local restaurant. I worked at the Boys and Girls Club. Those things cloud the years of experience. So if you aren't thoughtful about leaving your years of experience slightly open-ended, you may end up with an audience that has a lot of folks who are potentially still in undergrad and their years of experience aren't the kind of meaningful career experience that you'd be looking for in a full-time MBA candidate. We try to mitigate that by just being a little thoughtful about where the years are. Sometimes we'll say 8+ years when we really mean 5, because we're accommodating for a couple of years that people will put, whether it's in high school or college or whatever. We do find that for programs with a slightly older demographic, like a continuing education program or something where the students may be 35+, because the platform came out in 2003, those folks would have already been into their working lives. And so we tend to see less early career fluff experience in there. But for anything that is currently 25 to 34, I don't know, as somebody who hires a lot of 25 to 34-year-olds, there's a lot on those resumes that is high school and college experience that may not be relevant to what you're looking for. The other piece is age. The way that LinkedIn looks at age, and Forrest, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's based on the graduation year that you put in your education. So I graduated from Syracuse University in 2004. The platform looks at my age based on that graduation year. -4 years gets me to 18, or +4 years gets me to 22. So if you're somebody who's had a non-traditional education path, where perhaps you started, stopped, went to community college, stopped, came back and finished, you may look like a much younger target on LinkedIn than you are in real life. The way we tend to handle that is not to use age as a target. We tend to target based on experience and based on seniority. Just again, something to think about, and we can get into specific questions at the end of the presentation. We're expecting to have about 10 to 15 minutes to answer specific questions. But things to keep in mind as you go into the data platform, this is all based on self-reported data, so we have to make some judgment calls about how people are making those self-reporting decisions. Last thing that we'll get into a little bit more on this is exclusions. We want to be really smart about how we exclude folks from our campaigns. We have some examples about that later, but everything from lists to how we go in and build out, like in this example on the right-hand side of your screen, this is for an MBA program. We want somebody who has the right level of degree. We want them to have a bachelor's degree, but we don't want anybody who already has a master's or an MBA. And we also want to exclude people at the bottom who've listed their job as MBA, MBA student, or MBA candidate. Those exclusions can be as important as the data you are trying to include so that you limit any waste in terms of your spending. So let's talk a little bit about custom audiences. I'm not sure the experience level that folks have with this, but I'll talk a little bit about custom audiences and then turn over to Amy to talk a bit about how we've used them with the DeMoore-McKim School of Business. Basically, the custom audience is taking names and other identifiable information from your database and matching it to LinkedIn's users. They do this blindly. We don't know who exactly is being matched, but if you have 1,000 or 10,000 folks that are leads that you'd like to talk to about a very specific thing, we can upload them to LinkedIn. LinkedIn will cross-reference the data in our upload with their user data and come back to us and say, we've matched 40% of your data or 45% of your data. And now we know we have an audience that matches certain characteristics that we pulled out of our database. So Amy, maybe you can talk a little bit about how we've used that at DeMoore-McKim.
Absolutely. So targeting through pipeline and yield campaigns, targeting to custom audiences is extremely important for us here, as Pat touched upon. The majority of what we do is to target leads who are already qualified. So we have gathered specific information from Marketo, from our data platforms, in order to obtain marketing qualified leads and their information. So we know they're already interested. We know they've looked at our website, they've clicked into certain pages, they've opened our emails, they've clicked on a button to get more information. We know that they've touched us in some way, and we've gathered points for them. We know that they're a marketing qualified lead. So we're beyond kind of the stage of seeing, hey, are you interested in an MBA? So now we know they're interested. It's how do we move them from being a lead to that final step of enrollment. So two of the ways that we do this in targeting, we use in-mail and sponsored content as two of our methods. And we target these messages with a CTA such as apply now, or fill out the form, or request to speak with an enrollment counselor. So these are actions that the lead would take that would push them from just sitting in our lead pool to being perhaps in the application stage, or maybe starting the application, starting to speak with an enrollment counselor to get them to start the application. So that's very, very important with us, and again, in moving them through that funnel.
And this can be really important. I'm sorry, I was going to say this can be really important with just about any size school, but anywhere where there's enough leads that it's relatively impossible for your admissions team to reach out to and call and connect with each one of the leads. I think, Amy, like you talked about, there's already a system, a lead scoring system in place at DeMoore-McKim to qualify who the best leads are. But even at that, the number's in the thousands. So these are ways that we can get people, I think, especially with the scheduling an appointment, to get people hand in hand with your admissions team.
Absolutely, Pat, thank you. And one of the other things that is important here as well is we also include something called time trade. So we include a link where a lead could potentially sign up to receive a phone call from a recruiter or enrollment counselor. So that's just one of the more specific things that will narrow down our lead pool, and we know someone's really interested when they've indicated they want a phone call from us. They're not just opening 5 different emails and kind of letting them sit in their inbox. They're actively reaching out for that contact point. And another way we target messages as well when we're at the admit stage is we actually send messages to people who have been admitted to prompt them to enroll. So that is kind of the second level here. Once they're further down in the funnel, really just getting them to, confirm that they will be enrolled with us.
So another way we can use these custom audiences is to qualify or weed out, folks who are not, the prospect versus suspect conversation around purchase lists or large event data downloads. So your admissions rep goes to a college fair and brings back 5,000 leads, or goes to a GRE purchase or a GMAT purchase, or if you're at a law school and you have something set up with LSAC to purchase LSAT scores and LSAT takers at a certain level, you can use those lists to create custom audiences and speak directly to those users. So the qualifying piece would be if they come back from a large event with, like I said, 5,000 leads from a large event, you can then contact those folks with a specific in-mail or a specific sponsored content update and see who comes back with a fill out of a form or some other KPI that identifies them as the most worthwhile lead in that group, rather than having a huge number in your lead pool that never goes anywhere, and your lead numbers look great, which makes your projections look great, but maybe there's not a lot of reality in that number. I mentioned GRE, GMAT, and LSAT. These are other really good ways of leveraging other marketing tactics that you're going to use if you're a business school, a graduate school that relies on GRE, or a law school, to take some of those tactics and move them forward. At the DeMoore-McKim School of Business, we have specific student quality goals, largely tied to GPA and GMAT. GPA is a hard one to nail down, but GMAT, because everybody has to take it, we can go and we know we're buying certain characteristics, certain types of students from GMAT, and then we can target just those folks in a way to elevate leads that we know our admissions folks are going to find very valuable because of their quality as students. And we may also be able to target specific messaging to those people because we know they're going to be very competitive students in a full-time or part-time MBA program. Another way to use custom audiences is with re-engagement or exclusion. We talked about using certain pieces of the LinkedIn data platform for exclusion earlier in this presentation. For instance, if somebody lists their job as MBA student, or if they've already completed a master's degree, we don't want them as part of our target for an MBA. Another really effective way of doing this is taking an internal list, like a list of current students, and using it as an exclusion. So now, Amy, we ran into that a couple of weeks ago with a student at DeMoore-McKim.
We did. So we have been using InMail, like I mentioned, for some of the leads that we've qualified. We actually received a tweet directed at us through Twitter from a student who had actually received, she is now obviously a professional, she had received her MBA in 2002 and somehow kind of slipped through one of our filters and did receive an InMail mentioning that we thought she was qualified for MBA programs and we would love to send her more information and have her speak with a recruiter. And obviously, that is not quite our target. With age, year, and obviously has already had that qualification. There are a couple of things that potentially could have happened here, but we just wanted to touch on this to explain why inclusions are so important. It is possible in this case that she wrote in her degree herself. So on LinkedIn, when you are filling out your profile and all of your personal information, a lot of the fields will populate with school options, with program options, major options, and so forth. And it's possible that rather than selecting something from the dropdown, this is actually typed in without that prompt. And if so, it's possible that that would have slipped through one of our exclusion filters. In order to prevent this, perhaps we could have used an all-student list dating back even further. So potentially that list obviously didn't go back far enough in order to prevent that slip from happening, but it could have potentially been prevented had we used an even larger all-time student list. So that's just kind of an example of targeting gone wrong and how it potentially could have been prevented in this situation.
Yeah, I think we've all, been here where there's a, one thing slips through the cracks, even with everybody doing what they are doing their due diligence. It can be, embarrassing when somebody in senior management is made aware of something like this, and then it makes, it erodes some confidence in marketing. So we were trying to learn from this in terms of what Amy mentioned about using larger lists, because we often use current students as an exclusion list, but this person was a student who completed her program 16 years ago. So it just illustrates where some of the potential pitfalls are, and where if you're thinking about exclusion and trying to be as efficient as possible, thinking about exclusion lists, even in that kind of big aggregate way, if you have that kind of data set, can be really valuable. So we've talked about targeting. Let's talk about message. Amy and I have both mentioned sponsored content and InMail a decent amount. There are three main message types on the advertising side of LinkedIn: sponsored content, InMail, and text ads. Let's show you a little bit about sponsored content. If anybody is a LinkedIn user, either on your desktop or on your mobile or in the app on your mobile device, sponsored content is an ad that shows up in your news feed or in your information feed. This is an example of an ad that we are running currently for the full-time MBA program at Northeastern. A couple of things to keep in mind as you're looking at it. The text above the image is recommended to stay within 150 characters. So we'll talk a little bit about the difference of when to use in-mail versus sponsored content. But one of the nice things about sponsored content is if you have good differentiators that you can quickly roll out, it's meaningful in a 150 character environment. The fact that you can accelerate your career quickly with 3, 6, and 12-month residency opportunities with MBA level employment is a real difference maker for the DeMoore McKim program, so we lead with that. Something else that you can use, just an image, or you can use copy. Anybody who is comfortable with or often uses the Facebook platform will know that Facebook limits you to 20% copy on an image. LinkedIn does not have a limit like that. In fact, they recommend that you utilize that area for copy, whether that's a stat. We have other programs in other contexts that will talk about price, if price is a major factor, or if you have something like a nursing program that's a preparatory program, and you have an NCLEX pass rate that's really valuable. We've, in other contexts, run ads where we talk about a 95% NCLEX pass rate in that image. It gives you something really bold and inviting and interesting for the user while not using up your character count at the top. And then you have a CTA here that you can pick from. We tend to like download. The stronger the CTA, the better. We also can put in something, it's a pick list. So you can choose visit company website, learn more, view now, try now, or download. We have found download a brochure to be a very strong call to action. The agency standard, the industry standard for a while has been learn more, quote unquote. I think that that's gotten hackneyed enough that it's just not as effective. We also, I think, know, just as a broader marketing thought of ours, but that people understand when they fill out a form, what they're really signing up for is automated emails. So if they're going to get those spam messages from you and us, we're trying to give them something of value in return. And for these, it's a program brochure, stuff that's going to give them more details all in one place that they can always refer to. We've seen pretty substantial increases in conversion rate by going to this strategy versus learn more. That one's free. That's just an aside, not LinkedIn specific. So in-mail. An in-mail message, I'm going to back up, looks a lot like this. We're big fans of in-mail. There are a lot of things to keep in mind when you're going to create an in-mail campaign. Something that most folks don't understand right away is that an in-mail, unlike other LinkedIn messages, does not generate an actual email to the user's email account. Whereas if you and your professional colleague are sharing in-mail messages, there'll be a duplicate email sent to each of your email accounts. That's not the case with in-mail, with sponsored in-mail. The person has to be in their LinkedIn account, either in the app, mobile web, or on the desktop. And they'll see the little red message alert, but they'll only see it when they're in the platform. So what that means is even if you book, 10,000 sends, those sends may all go out right away, but the opens are going to trickle in over time. It goes, we could probably add for another day, but it goes in a big hump right away because in the first couple of weeks, you're going to get a lot of your opens, but then it'll trail off and continue for a long time. So when you're doing an in-mail, something that's timely in the copy is sometimes problematic because you may have significant portions of your audience opening the in-mail 6, 8, 12, 16 weeks after your send. So when you're doing something that is more brand related or more direct response related, an always on lead generation strategy per se, that usually works really well. If you're 3 weeks out from a term start and you're trying to goose enrollment for the last second, keep in mind that you need to have some other option for people in the copy, because if it's all to a term, a good portion of your audience isn't going to see it until it's too late. In the actual in-mail itself, there's more copy. There's this complimentary banner ad that goes along with it, which allows you really to call out highlights in a really meaningful way. This Add unit is a common type for DeMormicam with the really bold white copy against a red background. We really like it in this context because it works as a nice complementary message to the rest of what's in here. We pay very careful attention to who the sender is. If you've never done an InMail, you have to actually set somebody up as the sender. And the photo that's included here that you see on the left-hand side of the panel is that person's LinkedIn photo. It does pay to pay some attention to what that photo looks like. We had a client earlier this year, not DeMormicam, who had the executive director of their program, basically a dean level person, sending InMails from their account. This person, great person, one of the best leaders that we've ever worked with in education. His LinkedIn photo was of himself near a salt marsh with a baseball cap on. In a big photo, it looked fine. In a small circle, like the ones you see here, his face was very dark. He had a baseball cap pulled down over his eyes. He looked a little like the Unabomber. And people just don't want to get a shady InMail from someone they can't see. We ran one InMail for two different programs. One was a Master of Public Policy and another was an MBA. The MPP cost per lead was over $400. The MBA cost per lead was over $800, way above where our benchmarks are for success for these kind of tactics. We went back, got a professional photo shoot with the executive director, updated his photo before the next InMail. We've sent 3 InMails since. The MPP that was over $400 cost per lead has averaged $130 cost per lead, a 75% improvement. The MBA that was almost $900 per lead with the Unabomber photo, with a nicer photo and 3 InMails since, has averaged a $67 cost per lead. That's a 13 times improvement. Very small detail and a huge change in the performance of those campaigns. So just something to keep in mind as you're putting these together. Just about all of these are fine, but just if your photo looks off, don't worry about hurting someone's feelings, because you've got to let them know. You've got to talk about what the potential outcomes could be. We talked a little about the copy length, and being 1,500 characters is the availability. There's also a format for these that's written almost like in a recruitment style that tends to work best. We've tried a couple of different narrative styles here, and the recruitment style of saying, as we've looked at your profile, we think you might be a great fit, that tends to work really well. Another option here that's really interesting is using one of your current or successful alumni. The InMail that is highlighted here is for Northeastern's really innovative dual degree in accounting and an MBA. It's targeted for recent, just about to graduate seniors or recent graduates who have entered the workforce with liberal arts degrees that are having a hard time finding gainful employment. We then reach out to them about this accounting career program. It's a dual degree that they earn 2 master's levels degrees, including an MBA, in 15 months. They include the 3-month paid residency. And over the last 3 years, 100% of the students out of the program have been hired by major accounting firms. It's a great program. This InMail was sent by one of their graduates who can tell the story that other students in her situation were facing. Hit the labor market, very uncertain about what her future would be, heard about this program, tried it out, and is now a tremendous success. Can be really important, especially when you're introducing a new product. As I know, Amy, we've talked about this program and another one of Northeastern's called the Masters of Science in Innovation. Brand new categories of programs, InMail can be very valuable for new categories because you have more space to explain it. Whereas the full-time or part-time MBA, most folks have heard of that program. You're just trying to sell them on why yours is special versus trying to sell them on a new category, or even in this example where it's 3 things: a new career, a new category, and Northeastern University as the university to choose.
Absolutely. And just to touch a little more upon that, in terms of something like the MS in Accounting MBA program, the InMail just really drives effectiveness because it leverages a more personalized user experience. Like Pat mentioned, if we're trying to gauge interest in an MBA program, sponsored content is great. It will highlight why DeMormicam is a good choice. why our program specifically might be your best option. But for something like the MSA MBA or this MS in Innovation that is a newer program, using a personalized message really allows us to connect more with our leads, and having that type of success story just really drives it home. So for example, with the InMail that we used with this student, Madison, we had 254 leads coming from that most recent InMail at a $50.15 cost per lead. And just to compare that with something, our other MSA MBA InMails that we used were averaging $158.56 cost per lead. So you can tell that that really dramatically decreased the cost per lead, just showing the effectiveness of having that more personal message in this type of a situation. And for example, also something like our MS in Innovation program, where our students that we're looking for are going to be people who are already in the workforce. They've had significant years of experience. They may be in their 30s, and they're really just looking to take on a new role, take on a new challenge within their company. So using this InMail to explain why this program would benefit them, even many years out of school, is just very important. So that is just kind of an example of where InMail would be most effective.
One last thing on InMail to keep in mind when you're thinking about planning one, even though the sends do go over time, you do get a bulk of your opens early, which means you also get a bulk of your leads early. So it's important to coordinate with your admissions team. So if there's a single person responsible for responding to leads for an individual program, if you run a sizable InMail, you may be talking a couple of hundred leads show up in their inbox in a 24-hour to 48-hour period. That's a huge win and wonderful, but they need to be ready to process that kind of lead volume. And also it's good to know that they're not, say, going on vacation for a week or something like that. We try to be pretty mindful of that. And Amy and the rest of the team at Northeastern have a great communication line with their admissions folks. So, we do a nice job of not sending out something that's, $15,000, $20,000 in expenditure and end up with 300 leads, a huge win, but nobody gets talked to for 2 weeks because the person's in Saint-Tropez or something. But something to keep in mind. Last thing on the ad messaging standpoint, our text ads. I will say we do not leverage these very often. I'm sorry, Forrest. They're very good for branding. They're everywhere. They're very low cost. The cost per click is very inexpensive. So they can be a great add-on to campaigns. It's just not something that we've leveraged at a high rate to this point. I know we're running short on time, so I'll get into conversions. A couple of key points we wanted to talk about here. The way you convert these campaigns is twofold. One is from an in-app lead form, very similar to Facebook if folks have used that platform. The things that are different, you are limited in the number of fields you can ask. Every field in the form will be required. There are no non-required fields in a LinkedIn lead form. With that in mind, you want to be pretty tight with what you ask for. We tend to ask for email, phone, first name, last name, job title, and company. Sometimes we don't even ask for job title and company. This also means we tend to run program-specific ads. If we're running something in a portfolio, there's a limit to how many you can put in a drop-down. LinkedIn has recently allowed for drop-downs in their forms, but for instance, DeMoore McKim has graduate certificates, really strong programs for them. There are 13 of them. We can't run a portfolio ad on LinkedIn with an in-app lead form and allow a user to pick between 13. It's too many options for a drop-down. So we tend to run specific ads for specific certificates. That can be problematic in certain scenarios like that, where you have a big portfolio and you want people to pick from. The option at that point, if you're not going to use a lead form, again, this is what it looks like. You fill it out, you get the confirmation. Sorry, without the gobbledygook, this is from inside the platform, but the download piece to it. The other option is to use a landing page. So if you have something very specific, like you need somebody to pick between 13 different programs or 50 different programs if you have a wide variety, landing page is probably the way to go. We have other clients that require for somebody to go into their lead system to choose a program of interest and also a campus of interest, because their counselors are assigned based on program and campus. For that, we had to use landing pages. We can't use a lead form because there was too much variability in the form. When you're using a landing page, this is more of a marketing question than a LinkedIn question. There's the choice between a gated landing page, where somebody can't navigate to other pages. That's what we do with DeMoor McKim. That's been a marketing choice of the DeMoor McKim team for some time. Or you can go to a program page that has navigation, that's just a regular page on your website. Either is fine. The thing that you want to then consider is how you're going to count conversions, because LinkedIn does provide you a conversion pixel, which is going to allow you to measure both post-click conversions, somebody who clicks on your ad, fills out the form directly after a click from the ad, that can be attributable back to that click. That's usually going to also give people information in their CRM. If you have a CRM and your forms are populating either from a form ID or a landing page or some other post-click measurement in your CRM, that's where you're going to be able to give credit to a media channel. There's a whole other conversation, a whole other MEMS presentation we pitched them about how to measure leads coming from multiple sources. But that's one thing to keep in mind. The pixel will also measure post-view conversions. Somebody who has seen your ad, either in in-mail or sponsored content or text, and then gone back to, say they go to the landing page, they end up going to your main website a couple of days later, they do a Google search, they find the program they're interested in, fill out another form in another space. LinkedIn will still be able to tell you that a conversion occurred post-view and that LinkedIn played a role in affecting that conversion. What you'll then have to make some choices on your own is how you're going to count those conversions, because you probably won't see them in your CRM if you're using a last click attribution model like we described just a second ago. That's largely our presentation. We've got a little under 10 minutes for questions, and we wanted to open the floor to what's been in the chat, or Chelsea, if you have questions that you want to make sure the panel can answer.
Amazing. You guys make this sound so simple. So I appreciated getting to hear your perspectives. I think it's a great example of a company, a social media company, and a third-party vendor and an institution working really well together. And that's always nice to see, because sometimes I know that relationship is a challenge. So well done to you all for everything you've been able to do in the LinkedIn space. I'm guessing because of the title, there's a specific reason why you're focusing on these areas, but just to bring up undergraduate population, would you recommend LinkedIn as a viable platform for undergraduate recruitment, or is it really best suited for graduate?
Yes, we would. And I'm assuming that you're talking about non-traditional undergraduate degree completion and continuing ed. Is that right?
Yes, primarily I think from online learners who are seeking undergraduate degrees, yeah.
Absolutely would recommend it. Anybody who can benefit from a career-focused data source from targeting should be using LinkedIn. We do see that, like we have several schools that are using nursing programs, like an RN to BS nursing degree, where being able to target somebody who's already in a nursing career track is really important. You know, sometimes there's that confusion of somebody signing up for an RN to BS, you know, brochure download, but what they're really meaning is, hey, I'd like to be a nurse someday, and maybe they need to get into an accelerated second-degree bachelor program, or maybe they're a traditional undergrad, and so having that career target can be important to weed out those non-nurses from what would be otherwise an RN to BS pool, just as an example. Okay,
good to know. What about the changes? Early on in the webinar, you'd mentioned that LinkedIn at one point had some parameters and some settings that made it a challenge for a lot of folks to engage with it for recruitment in the higher education setting, and changes were made. About when did those changes occur?
Forrest, you're probably better to answer this, but in my mind it was in like the last 18 to 24 months, but that just might be when we got wise to it.
Yeah, you know, be honest with you, so that's probably right as far as the ones that you were listing. Even before that, maybe in the last 2 years, you've seen some of those evolve. But you're going to see changes on our platform every 3 to 6 months, and not necessarily huge changes, but these small incremental ones that for you guys, Pat, and others that were all found were enough, to compel them to switch and invest more on the platform.
And I will say, so it becoming a self-serve platform was a game changer for us as an agency, just because a core part of our competency is that the strategies we put together, we were actually executing. So we don't like to write a lot of insertion orders or purchase orders to third parties. We want our clients to have real control over these kind of campaigns. But what I do want to really nail down for folks is the education team at LinkedIn is fantastic. We've had nothing short of amazing relationships with everybody on their team, Forrest included, but there are others that we work with across. They assign reps per institution, and they're really a pleasure to work with, and they're invaluable for us because we better understand how the platform works when we go in and set up a campaign and have questions, and they're there to answer them for us and for our clients.
Okay, I think this question is going to be hard to nail down an answer to, but I know it's a question that comes up a lot. If someone is interested in getting into the LinkedIn market at this stage and maybe working with 5HD or another agency or something like that, what is a really good budget they could have in their mind to be able to test out LinkedIn for their market? And maybe we'll just take something as general as MBA, because you referenced it quite a bit as well. If someone wanted to test in a really effective way whether they can make a difference with their MBA enrollment on LinkedIn, is there a budget figure or range that they should have in mind that would help them determine if it's an option or not?
Forrest, can you remind me what the daily minimums are for sponsored content?
Yeah, it's a self-serve platform. I think you can have a budget as low as $10. And Pat, do you mind if I jump in here with some thoughts on this one first?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so as you think about whether or not LinkedIn's worth your time to invest, there's a couple of gating just a couple of gates you want to get through. The first is, can I get a cost per lead that I think is somewhat comparable, at least in the ballpark of other platforms? Once you get past that, then the question becomes, were those quality, leads, and are they converting enough? So just to get to the first question of how much should I spend to determine what is LinkedIn likely to deliver on a cost per lead basis? You should probably look at least around $2,000 to $3,000 on a particular program. So if you said, I want to try promoting my MBA program on LinkedIn, and I want to get a sense of the cost per lead. A lot of our clients are shooting for somewhere from a $250, maybe up to a $400 cost per lead if it's a much more higher priced program. But if you're looking for a $250 cost per lead, you should have a sense of what we're going to deliver if you've spent somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 in a test campaign. But once you see that if we're in the ballpark of what you need for cost per lead, you're going to have to spend now probably another, call it 2 to 3x that, to figure out, are those leads converting well enough to be a good cost per app, good cost per enrollment. So that's how I kind of think through your budgets as you work on the platform.
I completely agree with that. The only thing I would add is based on the type of program, which type of product you're going to use. If we're staying low cost, we tend to stay sponsored content versus InMail. But if it's a program that really requires a lot of explanation, we would probably want to point you more in an InMail direction. And that can mean just a little bit more for that proof of concept. But something in that $2,000 to $5,000 range, I think, is really appropriate.
Excellent. Well, we have finished about right on time. Before we conclude the webinar, we had questions about getting access to the materials after the fact. Those will be distributed through the UPC EA organization to anyone who is registered for the webinar, so you'll have access to view the recording after the fact with others at your institution or in your offices. Thank you for coming. Do you all have any parting words in the last minute?
Sure. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for spending part of your Wednesday afternoon with us. We really appreciate it and hope this is useful.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Everyone have a good day. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Chelsea.